Hello, everybody. I always feel the need to straighten up my desk right as a video starts. I don't know why, some weird compulsion. All right, let me make sure my microphone is working and set correctly. Cool. Maybe tip it forward a little bit there and not banging into things so we don't get a lot of static. All right. So as always, my name is Ammon King, full stack web instructor at Woz U. Let me share my screen. Blammo. And pin my video. Cool. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about Java loops, collections, and arrays. They're not quite as easy sometimes in Java, but they are fun. Let me set my stage here. Do a workshop, workspace. I spelled workshop and workspace correctly. Workshop. Make a new workspace to put my Java projects inside of. So I have Eclipse and I have a folder, two things that I need. So let's start out by opening up Eclipse. This will ask me where I want my workspace to be. I'm going to browse to the one I just made on my desktop, which is all the way down here. My project's going to go inside of there. Launch. This will launch Eclipse. Sometimes it'll take a second, especially when you're making a new workspace. There's some files and stuff that has to generate. All right, so here is Eclipse. I'm going to close the welcome screen. I'm going to untick this box to always show because I don't want it to always show. This is a blank default look at Eclipse. Let's make a project. There's about a dozen different ways to make a project in here. I can go to the File menu and say New. I can hit this little drop-down option. Say Java Project. I can press this button and select a project wizard. I can right-click and get to New. Right? Since I already have a hand on the mouse, I'm going to right-click in a blank area in the Package Explorer and say New Java Project. I'm going to call this project Loops and Collections. Loops and Collections. And I'm just going to press Finish. This will make me my Loops and Collections project. Loops and Collections project with an empty SRC folder and the Java system library. Inside of the SRC folder, I'm going to make a new package. I'm going to call this package com.ammonking.loops. And some sort of descriptive name in the middle, and then a more descriptive name on the right. From left to right, we go generic to specific. Inside this package, I'm going to make a new class. I'm going to call this loop application. Right? Typically, the default class file I'll make in a Java project will be something, typically the name of the project, and then application. I'm going to check the box to create public static void main. I want that in here. And press finish. Cool. We'll get a default commented outline of code in here. I want to get rid of that. And I want to output a line of text to prove that this works. I want to output it works to the console. Can I make this bigger? Yes, I can. Then I want to run this guy. Since this is the only project I have loaded up in Eclipse, I could press the play button. If I have more than one project, typically I want to get as close as possible to static void main for my project. And I can even right click on it and say run as Java application. It'll ask me to save because I haven't saved my file yet. Okay. Down in the console, I get it works. My project works. Getting set up in a Java project is pretty easy and just a couple steps to get going. All right, so let's start off with arrays, right? Arrays in Java are a little bit different than they are in other languages. Arrays in Java are a pretty low-level object, and they need to be structured certain ways. So say, for example, I wanted an array of numbers. I say my data type, I'm going to make an integer array. The square brackets denotes it as an array. Equals, and I can do a set of curly brackets and defaultly put some data inside of here. I can say my numbers are 2, 4, 6, 8. This puts 4 items in my array. So if I want to output one of them, say I want to output the first one. I want to output the number 2 to the console. And if I can just hit that key, cool. I can save this and run it. It's going to say the number 2, that's my first number. Index 0 is my first number. Right. Remember, our arrays start at index 0. So 0 is my first item, my 0th item. It's number 2. I could do the last one. I could do number 3. I could save that and run it. And I get my 8. It's my last item in my array. I have 0, 1, 2, and 3. All right. Pretty cool, pretty straightforward. What if I didn't know what numbers I wanted to put in there yet? Right? So what if I said instead int numbers equals, I just want to make an empty array. Right? It's not going to be happy about this. It does not like this type. I can't just make an empty array. Right, this is an empty array, but this could never have any items in it. Right. I could say making a new number integer array, but then it's going to tell me it needs to know how big it is. I want 4 items in there. Cool. Now it's a little bit happier. So when I want to make an empty array, I need to tell it what size it is. Empty arrays need a size or dimension. So if I take this number out, it'll actually give me a warning. Must provide either a dimension, expression, or an array initializer. I need to tell it how big I want it to be, because it's going to pre-allocate space and structure for this array. And then I can fill it up. I can say number 0 equals, I'm going to do odds, 1. Oop. Numbers at 1 equals 3. And you can even output those guys. I outputted numbers at 1. That will give me the number 3. I have access to them just like I did before. What if I wanted to get the last item out of my array? What would this say? This is going to say 0. It's a default number it puts in each spot when I make my array. If we're an integer, 0 is a default number. 2 is also going to be 0. As I keep on going backwards, I get then to my actual numbers. Cool. So most often I don't have an array that's pre-populated. I have an array that I want to gather numbers into. And if I know the size of the array and I want to use a basic array, I can start it up with a certain specific size. And then I can put numbers into it. And then I can access them as normal. Right? That's pretty neat. Arrays are pretty fun. And they can get pretty interesting. So some of the inflexibility with basic arrays in Java means that we can build stuff on top of them and make smarter arrays. There's something called an array list. An array list. An array list is going to be a bit smarter of an array. It can start out just empty and we can just put things in it. So kind of like more what a JavaScript array would be like if we're used to working with those. But these ones need a type of data. numbers was new array list int. The construction looks a little bit weird. I thought it was typed like that. Oh, I need to import. Yeah, that was right. No, I did this like 20 minutes ago. I'm gonna have to look up that structure. Java array list. I was looking at this just a little bit ago. Can we not do we have to do the full type? We do. It looks like I have to use the full object type of integer in there. Looks like I can't use primitive data types in that array list. So what does this guy do? This guy gives me an array that I can do all sorts of fun operations on. If I do numbers dot, I get all sorts of operations here, right? Which is pretty neat. In contrast, I'm going to uncomment out some of my earlier code. With this numbers array, if I do numbers dot after it, I just get some basic things I can do. I can convert it to a string. I can get the length. I can get the class. I can get some equals operators and comparisons. Right. But my array list is much, much stronger. Numbers dot, and I get all sorts of crazy things. I can add something. Numbers dot add 5. All right. Test this out. I want to see how long this array is. Numbers dot size tells me how long the array is. So hey, there's one item in there. Let's do this a couple times. We'll see that the size will change dynamically. So if I had 3 numbers in, I see the array size is 1, then 2, then 3. My array size is growing, which is something that I can't do with a stock array. There's pros and cons for using either. An array list is a much longer line of code to remember to try to set up, where a basic array seems a bit more natural. We don't have to import any other classes for a basic type of array, but for array list, we have to do an import for Java util array list. It's a library that comes from the Java framework that we import. Well, cool. Array list. And an array list works much more like I said, like a typical JavaScript array. Groovy. Where does that leave us? That leaves us with, if I have an array of integers, and I want to equal the new array of integers, I need to give it some sort of a size. If I said int size equals 5, I could give this size. I have a variable that I can then use to declare the size of my array. And then we can start introducing loops, and I can fill this array up with numbers. Right? So the first type of loop we're going to discover is going to be a for loop. For loop in Java looks remarkably similar to JavaScript. For loops in many languages look pretty much the same. They follow the same structure. Say for int I equals 0, I less than size, I plus plus. So I declare some sort of incrementing variable. I start it out at a certain number. I tell it when I want to continue, and I tell it how to increment each time. So if I print this out, each time I should get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers. And I get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I get my 5 numbers. And these just so happen to be the array indexes that will be my array of size 5. So let's fill this with numbers then. I can fill it with the numbers 0 through 4 pretty quickly. Say my numbers at index I equals I. That'll put 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 inside of my array. I filled up my array with numbers. I could prompt these numbers from the user. I could read them from somewhere. I could do some calculations. I could do all sorts of stuff. My for loop is great from when I want to start from a number and count upwards or downwards to a different number. So this allows me to populate my array with numbers. Pretty straightforward. A for loop. If I didn't want to use a for loop, I could do some other types of loops. The first type of loop is a while loop. It looks kind of like this guy. I have a condition. I start off and I say I want some sort of true-false conditional operator. While true, do this code. Otherwise, exit. As soon as we hit false, we'll go outside of this loop. So while, I'm going to say while, I need to do some setup here. Int counter equals 0. And I'm kind of constructing what would be my for loop just a little bit different. The pieces are in different spots. While counter is less than size. Counter. Okay. While it's less than size, counter plus plus. And my numbers at index counter equals counter. This will fill up my array the same way as I did before. I don't have any output, but I could pull a random one off of here. I'm going to say my output, my numbers at index 2. Should be the number 2. The number 2. Cool. That works kind of like I expected. As long as this condition is true, this loop will run. Then it goes all the way back up at the top. It says, all right, is that condition true? And then it runs again. And as soon as that condition is false, it skips this code and carries on with its life. Pretty neat. Okay. A while loop is generally, I'm trying to think of a good verbiage for this. This is a kind of like a guard, right? It checks before running. Right? It'll check this condition before running. If for some reason I start off my counter at 10, right? I get 0. This loop does not run if the counter starts off higher than the size. This condition is false. My code will never run. But if I set it up not like my for loop, it runs as I expect it to run. Which is pretty cool. The, I'm gonna say inverse of a while loop is a do while loop. Do. And at the end we have a while. Okay. I'm going to set up another situation here. I'm going to say int counter 2 plus plus. Increment my counter. I'm going to say while counter 2 is less than size. Looks kind of like the same type of conditions. I'm starting out a number at 0. I'm incrementing my number. I want to loop while I'm less than the size. Right. What I want to do here is I'm just going to sys out my number. I want to see what that does. This should just output 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. After I get rid of this guy, because I don't want too much stuff in my console. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Starts out at 0, prints out 0, counts up 1, make sure I'm less than my size, and repeats the process. Right? Something interesting happens if I make this condition what stopped before in my while loop. If I make my number higher than size, I can output 10. Right? It outputs first. So a do while loop is, I wanted to say sloppy. I don't want to say sloppy. A do while loop will always run once. And then check. right? It will always run once and then check to see if this condition is valid, right? And you can kind of see that. Say, do this code and then check to see if we're valid. Or a while loop will say, while we're valid, do this stuff. So it just kind of depends on where that while loop is, or where that while condition is, and whether we process once or check before we process, right? Each of these three loops have their places and their uses, as long as I don't delete them, right? They have their uses and their places. Like I said, a for loop is great for counting through something, generating numbers, doing something a set number of times, right? Crawling through an array, crawling through a structure, a list of items. A while loop and a do while loop are great for running until some scenario is met, right? You're reading input from a user and they have to type in exit to stop. You loop while the input is not equal to exit, or not equal to pressing a 0, or some sort of exit condition, right? Because they will keep on running until this condition is met. A for loop does the same thing, but it's kind of pre-built in that the condition will stop, right? Hopefully. A while loop and a do while loop have the benefit of running until something, but they have the drawback that if that until something doesn't get hit, the program will run forever until it is manually stopped or it runs out of memory. One of those two conditions, right? It will never stop. Maybe that's what you want. Maybe you want something that's going to keep on running and doing something, and it's just going to keep on running until you stop it. That's how you could accomplish that type of setup. I could keep on printing out like a date and time, and it's just going to spit out into the console. Well, these are our three major types of loops in Java. I'm gonna comment out everything I have so far, and we'll talk about another type of loop that Java more specifically has. To do that, I'm going to make an array, int numbers equals, I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3. Oh, I'm gonna, yeah. 9 numbers, right? The final type of loop in Java is an enhanced for loop. An enhanced for loop says, is it for? Holy crap, it's been a while since I've written an enhanced for loop. Java. Enhanced for. I think it is just for. Yeah, wow. I doubt myself too much. For integer num in numbers. Right? Looks like this guy. So I say, give me every number in the numbers array and call it num. So if I say sys out, in that kind of day, sys out num, this will print out the numbers 1 through 9. I get that down here. I get the numbers 1 through 9. I get every single item in my array, right? An enhanced for loop is, well, it's an enhanced for loop. I don't have to care about how big my array is. I just say, you know what, go through there and just crawl through it. Give me every item out one at a time, right? I don't care how many are in there. I don't care about what order they're in, about any of that stuff. However many items in there, give me one at a time and give me it as a variable called num. I don't have to pull them out by their index. I actually get that value out one at a time, which is pretty neat. That's a pretty powerful one. Especially if you just need to process through an array and do something with it. That's kind of feature perfect for why this was built. Right? A for loop is great for like wanted to put things in that array. An enhanced for loop is great for when I take things out of array. I want to process them. I have a work queue that I'm working through. All right, so I can use the first type of loop to populate it, the second type of loop, my enhanced for loop, to process everything in that array. Because that one doesn't care how many items are in there. Let's keep on going. I'll keep on going until the array is empty. Until it reaches the last item. And after that, it just stops. And I can prove that by outputting my numbers right here. 1 through 9. System out print line 1 through 9. Right? That's what that does for me, which is pretty neat. So just to an array at the top and a loop right below there, and I can process through my array. Right? It's pretty neat. Arrays and loops in Java are pretty fun. They're relatively straightforward once you kind of get a feel for how they work and how they're structured. I can create integer arrays, just like I did above there. I can create string arrays. My words. I can create string arrays. I can create pretty much any data type I have. I can create an array of Boolean, truths, as long as I declare the data type, it's happy. I say square brackets denoting that it will be an array. Make a string array called my words and fill it with these words. Make a Boolean array called truths and fill it with these true and false values. Right? If I want to make an empty one, I would say string vocab equals new string array. Let me give it a size 10. Okay, that's what I did. Wow. New string 10, I give it a size right there. So I say this vocabulary array is going to be a string array with 10 items inside of it. It's going to put 10 default values inside of there for it. And it'll just kind of pre-size my array. It's kind of like if you're drawing out, like if you're making a garden, you want to plot out your little plant sizes and everything first, and then you can put things inside of it once it's structured and set up. It's a weird analogy, but I think it worked. So cool. Arrays and loops in Java. Pretty cool, pretty straightforward. Nothing too super complicated. This is pretty much an example of all of the loops and some of the major types of arrays and how to populate them in Java. And a little look at array list. An array list is great for when you don't know how many items you want, but there is a little bit more processing and overhead with it. So cool. 28 minutes in, covered a lot of content. Is there any questions, concerns, comments, anything that I kind of left a little bit unclear or could review again? If so, speak. If not, as soon as this video gets done recording in our cloud system, I will upload it to our Vimeo channel for others to enjoy at their leisure. And they can skip through my first 2 minutes of getting everything ready, which I seem to do in every video. And my last 3 minutes of rambling at the end of the video too. Skip to the middle juicy parts. Right? So cool. Java, arrays, and loops. I hope you enjoyed and hope it was useful.